Texas has long been regarded as the U.S. capital of executions, but just a small percentage of the hundreds of prisoners executed there have been female. Each of these deaths left behind spooky memories of last meals and last remarks that still haunt prison walls, as well as shock and moral dilemmas. Each woman who passed through the infamous Huntsville unit's lengthy corridor of death was a cold-blooded killer or a contentious conviction. However, what did they say in their last moments, and who were they really? This is the story of all the women who were ever put to death in Texas, including their crimes, their last meals, and the haunting messages they left behind. Karla Faye Tucker. State of execution, Texas. Execution date, February 3, 1998. In 1983, Karla Faye Tucker and her boyfriend, Danny Garrett, broke into the Houston apartment of Jerry Lynn Dean, intending to steal motorcycle parts. When Dean stirred awake during the burglary, Karla, under the influence of drugs, attacked him with a pickaxe. She drove the weapon into his body repeatedly and later turned it on Deborah Thornton, a woman who had been staying over. The brutality was staggering, and Tucker later confessed that she experienced an orgasm with each swing, statements that stunned even seasoned investigators. Tucker was convicted in 1984 and sentenced to death. Over the years, her case gained international attention, not just for the crime itself, but because she underwent a profound religious transformation in prison. She became a born-again Christian, married her prison minister, and advocated for forgiveness and redemption. Support for her clemency came from unexpected places, including conservatives, international human rights groups, and even the Vatican. Still, then-Governor George W. Bush denied her final appeal. For her last meal, Karla Faye Tucker declined the traditional special last meal. Instead, she chose to eat what was being served in the prison cafeteria that day, a garden salad with ranch dressing, a banana, and a peach. Karl's final words, with calm resolve, addressed the families of her victims. "I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this. I am going to be face to face with Jesus now." She was pronounced dead by lethal injection at 6:45 p.m., becoming the first woman executed in Texas since the Civil War. Betty Lou Beets. State of execution, Texas. Execution date, February 24, 2000. Betty Lou Beets was convicted of murdering her fifth husband, Jimmy Don Beets, in 1983. She shot him twice in the head and buried his body in a wishing well in her backyard in Henderson County. But this wasn't her first brush with violent crime. Investigators later discovered the remains of another husband, Doyle Wayne Barker, also buried on her property. Her children testified that she had talked about killing her spouses before, and that she even involved them in the concealment. The case shocked Texas. A grandmother known for her fiery temper and unstable relationships was being accused of serial spousal murder. Betty Lou was sentenced to death in 1985. Her defense argued that she was a longtime victim of domestic violence and that mental illness, including post-traumatic stress disorder, played a role in her actions. Still, the jury found the murders calculated and cold. Despite a clemency appeal and widespread media attention that sparked debates about executing abused women, her sentence remained. At age 62, she was scheduled for execution. Beets declined the offer of a special last meal. Instead, she ate the regular prison meal served that day, making no special requests, nor did she make a final statement. The prison did not publicly release what that standard meal consisted of. Betty Lou Beets was executed by lethal injection at 6:18 p.m. CST on February 24, 2000 at the Huntsville unit, becoming the second woman executed in Texas in the modern era. Frances Newton. State of execution, Texas. Execution date, September 14, 2005. Frances Newton was convicted of murdering her husband, Adrienne Newton, and her two children, 7-year-old Alton and 20-month-old Farah, in April 1987. Investigators found the victim shot to death in their Houston apartment. A .25 caliber pistol linked to the murders was found in a bag Frances had placed in an abandoned house. Prosecutors argued her motive was financial. She had recently taken out $100,000 in life insurance policies on her family, listing herself as the beneficiary. Newton maintained her innocence, claiming the gun had been planted and that she was being set up. Her case drew significant attention from death penalty opponents, including groups that cited concerns over flawed forensic analysis and ineffective legal counsel. Appeals were filed multiple times, and her execution was stayed in 2004 by then-Governor Rick Perry to allow further investigation. However, after a lengthy review, no new evidence changed the outcome. Newton was rescheduled and executed the following year. Frances Newton declined a special last meal request and was served the standard prison meal of the day. Specific menu details were not released by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Like beats before her, Newton made no final statement and did not have a last meal request. Frances Newton became the first black woman executed in Texas since 1858. Suzanne Margaret Basso. State of execution, Texas. Execution date, February 5, 2014. Suzanne Basso was convicted in the August 1998 torture and murder of 59-year-old Louis Buddy Musso, a mentally disabled man from New Jersey, whom she lured to Texas under the pretense of romance. Once there, Musso was subjected to horrific abuse over several days by Basso and a group that included her son and other accomplices. He was beaten with belts, fists, and blunt objects, burned with cigarettes, and forced to bathe in a mixture of bleach and cleaning products. His body was later dumped near a ditch in Harris County. Basso was identified as the ringleader in the crime and was accused of targeting Musso to gain access to his bank account and life insurance. She was sentenced to death in 1999. Her defense argued that she suffered from mental illness and had a history of abuse, but appeals to overturn the sentence failed. She spent over a decade on death row, where her mental and physical health reportedly declined. Suzanne Basso declined a special last meal request. Per Texas policy enacted in 2011, Basso ate regular prison fare of baked chicken, fish, boiled eggs, carrots, green beans, and sliced bread. Basso declined to make a final statement. When asked if she had anything to say, she simply said, "No, sir." She was pronounced dead at 6:26 p.m. at the Huntsville unit, becoming the fourth woman executed in the U.S. since 1976, and the fifth woman executed in Texas in the modern era. Lisa Ann Coleman. State of execution, Texas. Execution date, July 9, 2014. Lisa Ann Coleman was convicted in 2006 for the torture and starvation death of 9-year-old Devontae Williams, the son of her girlfriend, Marcella Williams. The child was found dead in an Arlington, Texas apartment, weighing just 36 pounds, well below average for his age. Prosecutors argued that Coleman and her partner kept the boy bound, denied him food, and abused him over a prolonged period. Although Marcella Williams accepted a plea deal for life in prison, Coleman was sentenced to death. Her lawyers claimed the death penalty was inappropriate due to her difficult upbringing, including childhood abuse and mental health issues. However, the state maintained that the horrific nature of the crime and Coleman's leadership role warranted execution. She was held on death row at the Mountain View unit in Gatesville, Texas. Texas had abolished special last meal requests in 2011. Lisa Ann Coleman was served the standard prison meal of the day. In her final moments, Coleman had no final words. Coleman was executed by lethal injection using the drug pentobarbital. while she was the 1,389th person executed in the U.S. since executions resumed in 1976. She was only the fifth woman executed during that time. She is buried at Captain Joe Bird Cemetery. Chipita Rodriguez. State of execution, Texas. Execution date, November 13, 1863. Josefa Chipita Rodriguez, a Mexican Tejana woman known for offering meals and shelter to travelers in South Texas, was accused of murdering a horse trader named John Savage. Savage was reportedly carrying $600 in gold. The money was later discovered in the Nueces River near Savage's body, but despite doubts, Rodriguez was blamed. She was tried and convicted primarily on circumstantial evidence. Some theories suggest her teenage son, Juan Silvera, or others may have been involved. Rodriguez maintained her innocence throughout the proceedings and refused to testify, possibly to avoid implicating her son. The jury recommended mercy, but Judge Benjamin Neal overrode that recommendation, sentencing her to death. Her trial reflected deep racial and ethnic prejudices of the era, as Mexican-American defendants rarely received fair treatment. The lack of a robust legal defense further disadvantaged Rodriguez during a turbulent period amid Civil War tensions. On November 13, 1863, Rodriguez was hanged in San Patricio County at approximately age 63. Her final words, "No soy culpable," which means "I am not guilty," were recorded as she stood at the gallows. The state of Texas posthumously exonerated her in 1985, acknowledging an unfair trial influenced by racial bias and judicial authority. Chipita Rodriguez was the last woman legally executed in Texas before Carla Faye Tucker, marking the end of a century-long period with no female executions. Her case continually sheds light on the intersection of racial injustice, gender, and law in 19th-century Texas, highlighting how capital punishment often reflected societal prejudices. Today, she's remembered both in scholarly works and local folklore, with a legislative resolution recognizing the miscarriage of justice in her trial. Jane Elkins. State of execution, Texas, Dallas County. Execution date, May 27, 1853. Jane Elkins, an African-American enslaved woman in Dallas County, was accused of murdering Andrew C. Wisdom, a widowed man for whom she had been hired to provide child care and household tasks. On the night of the crime, Wisdom was found dead from an axe wound inside his home. Though Elkins claimed innocence, a grand jury indictment followed, and a jury of white men swiftly convicted her on May 16, 1853. Her trial was profoundly shaped by systemic racism and injustice. As enslaved, Jane had no legal representation, and her testimony held no weight against that of white witnesses. The court's decision reflected deep-seated racial and gender biases. She was sentenced to die, despite the absence of conclusive physical or eyewitness evidence tying her directly to the crime. On May 27, 1853, several hundred onlookers gathered at the Dallas County Courthouse to witness the hanging, a public event aimed at showcasing white authority and sending a message of deterrence. Her body was buried in an unmarked grave on site and later removed by medical students for anatomical study, highlighting how even in death her remains were treated as property. The brutal intersection of slavery, gender, and the death penalty in 19th-century Texas is exemplified by Jane Elkins's execution. Her story, which was frequently forgotten, is now being reclaimed through public historical initiatives and plays, like The Ballad of Jane Elkins, according to scholar Dana Ramey Berry. Her case serves as a compelling example of how justice was used as a weapon against marginalized people and the importance of continuing to study such histories in today's world. Kimberly LaGale McCarthy. State of execution, Texas. Execution date, June 26, 2013. McCarthy, then 36, visited her 71-year-old neighbor, Dorothy Booth, under the guise of needing to borrow sugar. Once inside Booth's Lancaster home, McCarthy attacked her, stabbing her 5 times with a butcher knife and beating her with a candelabrum. She also severed Booth's left ring finger to steal her diamond wedding ring, then fled with Booth's purse and Mercedes-Benz. Her motive was revealed when she pawned the ring and used Booth's credit cards the next day to purchase crack cocaine. DNA evidence found at the homes of 2 elderly women murdered in 1988. 82-year-old Maggie Harding and 85-year-old Jetty Lucas matched McCarthy's DNA. Both victims suffered savage blunt force trauma and were stabbed, and their purses and credit cards had been stolen. McCarthy was never charged for these murders, but the evidence was used during her capital sentencing to establish a pattern of violent behavior. McCarthy initially gave a written confession implicating herself and unnamed drug dealers in Booth's murder. However, this confession was later ruled inadmissible after an appeal, due to her having no legal counsel when she requested one. In November 1998, she was convicted and sentenced to death. After her conviction was overturned in 2001, Texas retried her 2002. During that trial, prosecutors presented DNA and forensic evidence tied to Booth's blood, reinforcing the case for capital punishment. All appeals were exhausted by July 2012, and despite reprieves, McCarthy's execution was ultimately carried out by lethal injection on June 26, 2013, making her the 500th person executed by Texas in the post-1976 era. Her execution marked a milestone in Texas's modern death penalty history. The stories of these women are etched into the past of Texas justice, from the gallows of the 17th century to the lethal injections of the 20th century. Every name, every last word, and every last meal shows not only a life lost, but also the weight of a system based on results. No matter if they were proven guilty or caught in a controversy, their names will always be linked to the high cost of crime and punishment in the state of Texas. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from behind prison walls.